So, you're a game designer in her book girl era. So hot, love that for you. You want to read books to learn more about the craft, so you go to the internet or perhaps your local library and start digging into all those must-reads for game designers. Many of them are great, but you do notice they all kind of repeat the same points, and you don't feel like you're learning anything new. Don't panic, reading is a fantastic way to get better at game design, but you might not be reading the right books. I'm Terry Ross, I'm a professional game designer, and I've read a book a time or two. In this video, I'm going to share 10 of my favorite books that I keep in my personal bookshelf. These are the titles that I reference constantly when I'm making my own games, and I can tell you, none of them show up in those must-read lists. And that's because... Are you ready for the big secret? Come close. Some of the best books for game designers aren't about game design. Oh, I know you're curious to know what I'm talking about, so let's dive in. Now girl, raise your hand if you've ever been playing an open world game and you've had to check the mini-map like 50 fucking times to find your next quest location, because it sure hell's happened to me. Instead of making their landscapes memorable and clear, I think a lot of game designers tend to rely a little too much on superficial navigational tools like mini-maps and quest markers and stuff. It sure would be nice if there was a book that somehow explained the science of how human beings navigate and why they get lost, so we can use that information to build better levels. Oh wait, there is a book like that. This is From Here to There by 𝒭𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒅, The Art and Science of Finding and Losing Our Way. Now, this book was never intended for game designers. In fact, I think it mainly gets picked up by those crazy people who like to go hiking for fun. But listen, there is so much amazing insight here about how the human brain processes spatial information. And it also has a lot of information about why human beings get lost, which I think is really cool. Did you know, for example, that just by giving something a name in your landscape makes it mentally easier for people who are going through it to remember it and plot it? That's a tip that is as useful to a game designer as a hiker. And that's just one of many that you get in here, which means if you are making any type of game where a player has to walk through a map, 2D or 3D, there is information in this book that's not just relevant, but helpful for you. Now it's time to choose your own adventure. The light or the dark? Do you like to make games about joy or fear? And what if you knew exactly how you could inspire those emotions in your players? I'll tell you about both books in a second, but first I'll start with the one that I picked because, of course, this is the Cute Games Club. This is Joyful by 𝒭𝒭𝒕𝒆𝒅. I've already recommended this book in my How to Make Girly Games video, but I don't mind repeating myself. Why do round shapes look fun? Why do things organized neatly feel so satisfying? Why does looking at the ocean make us feel calm? Each section in this book connects certain aspects of visual design with specific positive emotions. Every time I read this book, I think a lot about the Nintendo's like Wii era, or like the DS and the 3DS era, those sort of like round, bouncy, bubbly shapes. Everything's very clean, kind of Frutiger arrow. If I didn't know any better, I would say, did they read this book? But if you want to create something like that, that's sort of like fun, bright, welcoming visual style, this is an amazing, amazing handbook for how to use those tools to create specific emotions. On the other hand, if you chose the dark side, there is Landscapes of Fear by 𝒭𝒑𝒏. Some of you know, outside of YouTube, my official title, my real job is I'm an amusement designer. And this is the book I read when I was working on my very first haunted house. There is so much nuance and difference between the dread of the new or unknown, or unease when you feel like something is not quite right, or the survival response when you are being confronted with immediate danger, or perhaps even panic when you're being reminded of a past traumatic incident. We classify all of these things as fear, but they are different physical responses and they all have very different triggers. Geographer 𝒭𝒑𝒏 does an amazing job, to me, at dissecting fear as not just one emotion, but several different specific physical responses that are intertwining and reacting to your environment as you move through life. Both of these books are really fun to read, right? But for a game designer, they are much, much more than just a simple analysis of how external stimuli will affect human emotions. These are effectively teaching you tools that you can put in your game to create a response in your player. Okay, now I know when you clicked on this video, you saw the cute bright thumbnail, you thought that this was going to be just a fun little romp through the world of nonfiction. But unfortunately, I am gonna make you read a feminist text.
That had no chance of being completed in the field of play.
Much progress towards equity and inclusion has been made in the game development community, but we still have a ways to go. And I could point to the many examples in video game history that prove just how outrageously sexist it still is out there. But honestly, honey, there isn't enough time in the day. So if you have to read a single book that lays bare the many iniquities of our society, why not pick the one that also makes you a better designer? This is Invisible Women by 𝒂𝒓𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒅, and what it covers broadly is how when we design anything, and I do mean anything, a piano, a phone, a safety harness, a city, we are designing for male bodies by default. That's not just a hot take, by the way. This book has tons of data and historical evidence presented that proves the bias. And it also has some newer data we have that's kind of starting to show the results of what those design choices are doing to people who do not have the default male body. Spoiler alert. It's always bad. There is one example in here actually from the video game world, and I've been in the video game world for a really long time. I had no idea this was happening. To be honest, almost every example I read in here, I was gooped, I was gagged. I was like, I mean, I knew that we were living in a sexist society, but I didn't know it was that bad. Jesus. Aside from opening your mind, what Invisible Women really trains you to do is be a little bit better at identifying who and how design excludes. And that's actually an awesome skill to have, because when you can identify those exclusions, what you're doing is identifying a need that you as a designer can fulfill. I mean, that's basically why I'm out here doing the Cute Games Club. I happened to notice that not very many people were making cute and girly games. So that's what I'm doing now, and you can do it too. Now, there was a time in this country where people were so bored, they would just circulate books that had games and descriptions of games and the rules for those games in them. And I have several of these books actually. I collect them because they are invaluable to my creative process. You do not have to get these exact books. In fact, it's really fun to go like hunting for some yourself at like a thrift store or a little free library. Actually, this one, true story, I got this out of a dumpster. These types of books will have descriptions of card games or party games, usually games that you can play with just stuff that you have around the house. Kind of the type of game that's in here doesn't really matter. What's important is you find a book that was written before the internet. Back then, games were not really homogenized like they are today. If you asked Google or ChatGPT for like game ideas, it's gonna tell you the same thing it tells everyone else. Musical chairs, putting the tail on the donkey, the tag. It's like, this is stuff that is already safe and popular. You're not gonna find that in these books, okay? The types of games that are written in these books go off the motherfucking wall. Here's one from a collection of Victorian party games. This is a real game that people were playing in the 1800s. Apple and candle. A string is suspended from the ceiling or light fixture with the lower end secured around the stem of an apple. A candle is then stuck into the side of the apple. Players take turns attempting to catch the swinging apple by their teeth without getting burned by the lit candle. I mean, tell me that wasn't invented by someone goosed up on laudanum, okay? I know it's silly, but I'm being dead serious when I say that these are fantastic for your creative process, because you know, you or I would not be able to come up with this shit. But what this has is an extraordinary library of just weird and unusual mechanics. These are so fun to read and collect. Have fun looking for these. Now, yes, the thesis of this video is that you do not need to read books that are explicitly about game design to become a good game designer, but, you should read one. Specifically, you should read this one. This is A Game Design Vocabulary by 𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒅 and Naomi Clark. I think the problem with most books about game design is their entire purpose seems to be coming up with some grand unifying theory of what games are or what games should be. And what's so frustrating if you're a game designer is all of that's really interesting, but it doesn't necessarily teach you how to make a good game. But this book has kind of the opposite premise. It doesn't really concern itself with what games should or shouldn't be. It's mainly asking you, what are you trying to accomplish with your design? And here are some tools for how to accomplish it. First off, it frames games as a conversation between designers and players, and I think that's a really refreshing modern framework. It validates an entire side of games that the industry previously refused to acknowledge. I also really like how it elevates the player to, like a participant in the game experience, right? They're not just a little test dummy running through your levels. They deserve your respect and consideration when you're making a game. This is something that far too many game design books overlook, in my opinion. The first half of the book develops a new vocabulary for how you make your game. So for example, there's verbs, which are the actions you give the player to act with. Then there's objects, which are the things that you give the player to act upon or against. And then there's scenes, how you create the context for the player in the game. Second half of the book is how all of those things interact to create interesting or meaningful experiences. Guys, I've read a lot of game design books, and this is the one.
She really is that girl.
And by the way, look at how skinny she is. In less than 200 pages, you have an amazing framework for analyzing the games you like to understand why they work so well, and analyzing the game that you're making to learn how to make it better. I mean, she left no motherfucking crumbs. What else is there to say? Actually, in my How to Make Girly Games video, I also recommended a game design vocabulary, and someone in the comments let me know that it is currently out of print, and the only available copies seem to be in the hands of deranged grifters. So since we are at the halfway point of the film, let's take a tea break. I want you to sit back, I want you to relax and listen, because I'm going to tell you exactly how to get all of the books on my list for free or very, very cheap. If your own library doesn't have the book you want, because that's the first place you should be checking, check to see if the title is available on Open Library. Not many people know the Internet Archive has a library system where anyone with an email address and an internet connection can check out books. On the other hand, if you're looking to buy books, don't go to Amazon. If you want to do something stupid and toxic, get back together with your ex. In the meantime, I have an alternative for you that is better and cheaper than Amazon. May I present to you thrift books? This is not sponsored content, but it fucking should be, because easily half of my library has been purchased from this website. Thrift books is literally like ThreadUp for books. They will collect books from all over the country, used books, they keep them in your warehouse, and they sell them back to you at an insanely discounted price. That's it. It's perfect. It's beautiful. Add 20 to cart, okay? Now, occasionally, the book that you're looking for may not be in stock at thrift books, so we have to turn to the third option. Okay, pay attention. Actually, put the tea down. This is important. There's a place online where you can download any book you want for free. However, thanks to various made up and stupid reasons, I can't just tell you where that website is, so pay attention. Do not go to Google and look for the archive that belongs to Anna. Okay, back to the video. Now, we all know the phrase, those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. And that's just as true for game designers as it is fascist dictators. Someone else who makes games like you do has probably solved problems that you yourself are going to encounter in your development journey. That's why I think every game designer should be reading postmortems and video game history books, but not just for the games that they like or the ones that are popular. You need to read the ones that are in your genre specifically. Now, if you like to make cute and girly games, I already listed a bunch of awesome history books in my How to Make Girly Games video. It's kind of towards the end if you want to flip over there. But for everyone else, I highly, highly recommend that you look through the catalog of Boss Fight books. Boss Fight is an amazing independent publisher of game history books, and I don't know who came up with this idea, but it is brilliant. Each title focuses on a single game, and it tells you the complete story of how that game was made. Something I really love about Boss Fight books is they're all written by industry insiders of some kind. It could be journalists or people who like worked on games themselves, and they're usually like particularly passionate about the game that they're covering. So you end up getting these incredibly insightful, in-depth interviews and research. A lot of times you'll see them talking to not just the publishers or the dev team, but sometimes you'll hear from the musicians, the writers, the artists. Sometimes you'll hear from like fans, super fans who played the game when it first released and like the impact it made on them. The end result is this incredibly rich, loving tribute to like a single game, and you learn so much from reading just one little book. This copy that I own is for Knights of the Old Republic, and I didn't really choose it, I just happened to find it in a thrift store, but it was really fun. I've read 3 of these so far. My library has a bunch of them, and every single one has been a banger. There are currently 30 or so Boss Fight books in circulation, and they are working on publishing more. And if you look through their catalog, you will see that they cover games across all genres. They have narrative games, puzzle games, action games, RPGs. Take a look at their catalog, flip through, find one you like. I have a feeling you will find at least one little history book that speaks to you. Art, code, design, music. We think that these are all of the components that make up a successful video game, but there's actually one more that a lot of people tend to miss, and that's UX. UX stands for user experience. And in the context of games, I think it mainly has to do with every interaction players have that isn't explicitly gameplay based. So you're covering things like how comfortable are the controls to use? How easy is the game to learn? How complicated are the menu and inventory systems? Things like that. The tricky thing about UX is that when it's really good, you don't notice it at all. The game will just feel really natural and intuitive and easy to pick up and play. On the other hand, when UX is bad, people tend not to realize that the UX itself is the problem, and they try to conflate it with like bad game design, which sucks because I've played a lot of games that are like actually really great, but because the UX was so bad, it was kind of detracting from the overall experience. And I think honestly, those games are not as popular or selling as well because they're not paying attention to that one crucial component. Now, the 2 best books ever written about user experience are Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug and The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. The sacred text status that these books have reached in certain design spaces really can't be understated. If you don't believe me, tuck this bad boy under your arm on the way to the farmer's market and see if you don't have 8 graphic designers' phone numbers before you even make it to the matcha stand. These books are so good, there's honestly no reason for you to read a book specifically about UX for games, in my opinion. In fact, it's very likely that what's going to be in those books is heavily borrowed from here anyway, so you might as well do yourself a favor and just go straight to the source. This is the first book on the list that I'm gonna start by saying is maybe not for everyone. Or no, actually that's not true. I think every game designer would benefit enormously from reading this book, but it is something that they should probably read after you've read everything else because, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, she is thick. She is caked up, honey. This is Metagaming by Stephanie Bullock and Patrick Lemieux. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This book is what I think English majors feel like when they're reading Shakespeare. The text is so dense with meaning that you sometimes have to take it line by line. I know that was certainly true for me. But when you actually sit down and take the time to decipher everything, you really do walk away feeling smarter. Metagaming entails the material, historical, and experiential complexities that video games that the ideological avatar of play rule out. I mean, Jesus. When I first picked this book up, I thought it was just gonna be like a very surface level exploration of metagaming. So I was expecting to learn about esports, modding, speedrunners, you know, that kind of thing. What I got instead was a complex manifesto on the human urge to play and experiment. There's like a philosophical analysis in here of making and breaking and remaking rules. There's even an anti-capitalist takedown of license to play, the commodification of play, of playfulness as status. It's really intense, guys. I know that sounds like a lot, but what I think the book is saying is, isn't it interesting how whenever someone gives us a game with a preset of rules and expectations and goals, human beings will always inevitably find some kind of way to fuck with it. We literally cannot help but play with everything. And given that it's in our nature to play, why are we not more critical of the institutions and entities, even within the gaming space, that are trying to restrict our playfulness? And that last part, I think, is very interesting. It feels very relevant to the modern era of gaming and the modern era of politics. This is the era of when you buy a game, you're not buying a game, you're buying a license to play the game, which can be revoked at any time. This is the era where if you mod a game or you try to preserve a game, you could be sued for millions of dollars. Even more broadly, we live in an era where governments are cutting spending on social places and community places and places to recreate. And that's having a literal, like, detrimental effect on our minds because we love to play and our play is being restricted. Like, we literally can't go out and, like, do fun stuff anymore. I loved reading this, even though it was pretty challenging. Honestly, I wish I was better at hyping up the ideas in here because they're really powerful, they're great. But I definitely recommend you check this book out if you're interested in thinking about play and gaming in a really new, refreshing way. In case anyone is wondering what my favorite book on this list is, we have reached it. This book is different from all of the other books that I've recommended so far because there is absolutely nothing in here that you can apply to become a better game designer. This book is not about the what. This book is about the why, and that's why it's so important that every game designer reads this. This is Art and Fear by David Bales and Ted Orland. When I was just getting started in this career, I definitely had the mindset of a grandiose perfectionist. I wanted to make big projects that sold really well. It made me super famous, very original, I know. And, you know, unsurprisingly, I didn't come anywhere close to meeting any of those goals. And I ended up in this era of really paralyzing self-doubt. I was terrified of not making something that was incredible, so I wouldn't work on anything at all. And because I wasn't working on anything at all, I would get depressed. And because I was depressed, I wasn't improving. And because I wasn't improving, I couldn't come up with projects that I felt were like worthy of the work. It's this cycle. It was just like this ongoing cycle that's went on for years and years and years, where I think I only made like 2 or 3 games over like a 5-year period. It was terrible. And this book, after 5 years, is what finally broke the cycle for me. And it's really funny because I read it completely by accident. Somebody actually recommended to me The Artist's Way. It's like a very popular like self-help book that a lot of people talk about. I was in a bookstore and I couldn't really remember The Artist's Way, so I saw this book and I was like, oh, I think this is that book that everybody's been talking about. So I picked it up. It completely changed my life. And then I realized that it wasn't The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way is some kind of like pseudo-Christian workbook for uncreative people. Whatever, I don't care. This book is 100 times better and nobody talks about it, which is insane to me. The central question this book asks you is, hey artist, why the fuck are you actually making your art? Yes, Terry, you want fame, you want renown, you want money, but is that the reason why you are making games? No, the reason you are making games is because you like to make games. So why the fuck are you letting all this other shit get in the way? There's no cussing in this book. I'm just really excited. I wish I could grab my past self and like just like choke them out a little bit. The moment I stopped throwing myself at these big, impossible standards and projects, and I just did all the dumb, silly, stupid shit, when I started making things badly on purpose because it was more important to make something than to not make anything at all. That is what's getting 100,000 views on YouTube. All the dumb games that I make on itch.io, that is what people are actually playing. Like, I kept thinking that the reason that I wasn't improving was because I didn't work hard enough, or I didn't have like enough self-discipline. No, it was because I didn't allow myself to be bad at it. I honestly believe perfectionism and high standards are like a mortal sin. If you have it, get rid of it, because it's holding you back. And if you would like a book to beat some sense into you, read Art in Fear. Okay. We have reached the final book on this list, and I have saved the best for last. Out of all the other books I've recommended, I think this one is the most important one to read. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the title of the book because I don't know the title. I've never read the book, and I never will. Before I explain, I just want you to go into your head and think about some of the games that are special to you. This game could be really popular and critically lauded, or maybe it's not even that good. Maybe you only like it out of nostalgia because you played it when you were a kid. No matter what the game was, I'm willing to bet that the reason it's so special to you is because it's different somehow. When you played that game for the first time, there was something in it that you had never seen before, and it blew your mind. Games come into being a lot of different ways, but I think that with a lot of these special games, they tend to always come into being because a game designer had a unique life experience that they were able to distill down in a magical way and just turn it into something really special. 𝒭𝔢 𝔬𝒦 created Harvest Moon because he was nostalgic about his life in the country. Satoshi Tajiri made Pokemon because he was inspired by his childhood hobby of collecting insects. Actually, earlier this month, Jenny Zhao Shaw, who's one of my favorite game designers, she won a Seamus McNally Grand Prize for her game Consume Me, which was based on her high school eating habits. I say all of these examples so you realize that someday the thing that sets your game apart will be your own life experience. You literally can't stand out if you copy what everyone else is doing. So if you have interest in some kind of obscure topic, master it. If you are part of some community, immerse yourself in it. If life gives you any kind of memorable experience, document it, think about it, feel it fully. And a tool that can help you with all of these things is books. The final book on this list, the most important one that you read, is simply a book that you care about. I'm obsessed with game design, so yeah, half of my library is pretty much dedicated to that. But those are not the only books that I read. I have books about beautiful words and how to be eloquent because I enjoy writing. I have books about amusement parks and carnivals and fairs because, as you know, I work in the amusement industry. I have cookbooks and books about the history of Mexico because my family is from Mexico. And I have a bunch of tacky Regency romance books because I am single. My life isn't particularly interesting, but I make an effort to be interested in it because, for better or for worse, my life experiences are going to be the thing that make my games my games. So get out there and find the books that make your life and your games richer. That's it, baby. That's the list. Woo! I'm exhausted. Thank you guys so much for watching. I keep telling myself to stop making long videos because they take ages to produce. Nevertheless, here we are. I started writing the script in August and it is now October. But you know what? I think that's good because this is fall. I think fall is a great season to read books, you know? So it all ended up nice in the end.